Alright, I don't even know where to start. Maybe I'm just looking for advice, maybe I just need to vent, or maybe I just want someone, anyone, to tell me I'm not crazy for feeling like my entire world just got flipped upside down. My name's Tony. I'm 38, been married to Selena, 36, for 12 years. We've got 2 kids, a house, the whole dream, or at least, that's what I thought. Turns out, I was living in a dream while my wife was out here starring in her own personal soap opera with her coworker Brian. It started small. Over the past year or so, I could feel Selena pulling away. Nothing huge, just little things. She stopped laughing at my jokes as much. Stopped holding my hand in the car. I'd come home from work, and she'd barely look up from her phone. Date nights turned into quiet dinners where she spent more time texting than talking. And the bedroom? Let's just say I thought life got busy. I thought maybe she was stressed. But nah, turns out she just found someone else to give her that spark. I wasn't even looking for anything when I found out. It was just one of those random moments where your gut tells you something's off. We were watching a movie on the couch, her phone was next to me, and a notification popped up. Nothing crazy, just a preview of a message from Brian. Can't stop thinking about you today. You looked so damn good at work. I felt my whole body go cold. At first, I thought, no way. Not Selena. I mean, yeah, we'd been distant, but she would never. Right? I glanced at her. She was focused on the TV, completely unaware. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. I grabbed her phone like it was nothing, pretending I was checking the time. My hands were shaking as I swiped the notification away and opened her messages. And that's when I saw it. A thread of texts. Some playful. Some flirty. Some downright dirty. And then, just to twist the knife, there was a picture. Not naked, but enough to make my stomach turn. A mirror selfie, her lips slightly parted, wearing that black top I always told her she looked amazing in. And Brian? Oh, he had responded all right. Damn, Selena, you're killing me. Wish I could see more. I must have made a noise, because she turned to look at me. What's wrong? She asked, all innocent. I just stared at her. I couldn't even find the words. And then, I did the only thing that made sense. I flipped the phone toward her. What the hell is this, Selena? Her face went white. She snatched the phone from my hand so fast, like maybe if she deleted it right then, it would all disappear. But it was too late. I had seen everything. She stammered, Tony, it's not what it looks like. But I wasn't having it. So you didn't send him flirty texts? You didn't send him that picture? She opened her mouth, then closed it, and I swear, I saw her brain scrambling for the right excuse. Finally, she sighed. Okay, yes. But Tony, I swear, it's just texting. Nothing ever happened. And that's when I laughed. Actually laughed, because wow. Nothing ever happened? You've been sneaking around, sending him pictures, letting him talk to you like that, and you're really about to sit here and tell me it's nothing. She ran her hands through her hair, looking frustrated. I was never going to actually cheat, Tony. She hesitated, then whispered, I just like the attention, okay? And there it was. The dagger straight to the heart. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab my car keys and drive off. I wanted to punch something, preferably Brian's smug face. But instead I just stood there, staring at the woman I had built a life with, realizing that somewhere along the way, she stopped choosing me. And that was the moment I knew, this was going to get ugly. I just stood there, staring at her. My hands were clenched into fists, not because I wanted to hit anything, but because I was trying to stop myself from shaking. I was angry, no, furious, but underneath all that rage was something worse. A hollow, sinking feeling in my gut. Selena was still sitting there, clutching her phone like it was some kind of lifeline. Her face was red, her eyes darting back and forth like she was searching for an escape route. Say something, Tony, she whispered. I let out a breath, slow and steady. How long? She swallowed hard. A few weeks. I shook my head. Don't lie to me. Her lips pressed together, and I saw it, the hesitation. The moment she had to decide if she was going to come clean or feed me more lies. And of course, she picked the latter. 2 months, she finally said. But I swear, Tony, it was never serious. I scoffed. Never serious? You sent him pictures. You let him talk to you like that. You had whole conversations about how he makes you feel special. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Tell me, Selena, did I ever stop making you feel special? Or did you just enjoy the thrill of someone new? She opened her mouth, then closed it, looking down at her lap. She couldn't answer, because she knew the truth. I ran a hand down my face, trying to keep myself from losing it completely. And what about him? What does Brian think this is? She let out a shaky breath. He flirts, but he knows nothing can happen. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yeah? That why he's talking about how he can't stop thinking about you? That why he's asking for more pictures? She flinched. Good. I sat down across from her, rubbing my temples. You know what the worst part is? If I hadn't checked your phone tonight, how much longer would this have gone on? She stayed silent. I looked up at her. Would it have escalated? She shook her head quickly. No. I wouldn't have. But you wanted to, I cut in. You wanted him to want you. You wanted that feeling. You wanted more than what we had. Her face twisted in frustration. Tony, it's not that simple. I shot up from my seat. Then explain it to me. I snapped. Explain to me how my wife, started sneaking around with some guy from work. She started crying then. And I should have felt something, pity, sadness, regret, but all I felt was empty. It was stupid, she sobbed. I wasn't thinking. I never meant to hurt you. I sat back down, staring at her like she was a stranger. But you did. She wiped at her face. I miss how we used to be, Tony. I miss feeling wanted. And I know that's not fair to you, but I got caught up in it. It was exciting, and I liked it. But it was never real. I let that sink in. She liked it. She liked the attention. She liked sneaking around behind my back. And now, because she got caught, she was suddenly sorry. I exhaled slowly, staring at the floor. So what now? She sniffled. What do you mean? I looked her dead in the eyes. What are you going to do about it? Because I sure as hell can't be the only one trying to fix this. Her face scrunched up in guilt. I'll block him, she said quickly. I'll delete his number. I'll switch departments if I have to. Just, please, Tony, don't let this ruin us. Ruin us? She was the one who did this, and now she was scared of the consequences. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted yet. All I knew was that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages. I saw that picture. I saw Brian's name flashing on her screen like a taunt. Selena had gone to bed crying, but I stayed up, sitting in the dark with a drink in my hand, staring at nothing. My mind wouldn't shut up. Every little moment from the past few months started replaying in my head, every time she smiled at her phone, every late night she stayed up texting, every time she rolled away from me in bed. And now it all made sense. At some point, my hands moved on their own. I grabbed my phone and typed Brian's name into Facebook. I had seen him once, maybe twice, just some guy Selena worked with at the hospital, nothing special. But now? Now, he was the enemy. His profile was public. Big mistake. I scrolled through his pictures. He had that cocky look, the type of guy who thinks he's charming but is really just a snake. A few posts about sports, a picture of him at a bar with his buddies, one with his arm around some girl from last year. He didn't look like much, but I guess that didn't matter. He was new. And apparently, that was enough for my wife. I wanted to message him. I wanted to call him out, let him know I knew everything, make him regret ever looking at Selena. But I stopped myself. Not yet. I wasn't going to be reckless. Not like her. Instead, I opened my texts and started typing. Tony, you said you'd block him. Do it now. I want proof. She replied almost instantly. Selena, I will. I promise. A few seconds later, she sent a screenshot. Brian's number was blocked. I stared at it for a long time, but it didn't make me feel any better. Tony, delete the texts. All of them. She didn't argue. Another screenshot came in, her chat with Brian, wiped clean. I should have felt relief. But I didn't. Because none of this erased what she had already done. The next morning, Selena was quiet. She looked like she hadn't slept either. We went through the motions of getting the kids ready, making breakfast, pretending everything was normal. But the air between us was heavy, suffocating. I wasn't ready to talk yet, and she knew it. She kept looking at me like she wanted to say something, but every time she opened her mouth, she stopped herself. Finally, right before she left for work, she reached for my hand. "Tony, I love you." I pulled away. "Do you?" Her face crumpled like I had slapped her. "Of course I do." I stared at her. Then why wasn't I enough? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't wait for an answer. I just walked away. I needed space. I needed to think. But one thing was clear, this wasn't over. Not even close. I barely spoke to Selena for the next few days. I was still too angry. Too raw. She tried, though. Oh, she tried. She'd linger around me, waiting for me to acknowledge her. She'd send texts throughout the day. "I miss you. I'm so sorry. Please talk to me." But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wasn't ignoring her to be cruel. I just didn't know what to say. The kids didn't notice much, thankfully. I made sure of that. I kept up appearances, smiling when I needed to, acting normal. But at night, when it was just me and Selena, the silence between us was louder than any argument we could have had. She hated it. On the third night, she finally snapped. "Tony, I can't take this," she blurted out as I sat on the couch, pretending to be invested in some random TV show. I didn't even look at her. "Take what?" "This." She threw her hands in the air. "You barely talk to me. You won't even look at me. I know I screwed up, but..." I turned to her, my voice sharp. "You know you screwed up? Do you really?" She flinched. "Yes. And I've done everything you asked. I blocked him. I deleted everything. I even spoke to my supervisor today about transferring units so I won't have to see him at work. That caught my attention." "You did?" She nodded quickly, like she was hoping that would earn her some points. "Yes. I told them I needed a change. I don't know if it'll happen right away, but I'm trying, Tony." I studied her for a long moment. "Why didn't you do all this before I caught you?" She bit her lip, looking down. "Because I wasn't thinking. Because I was selfish. I was stupid." "Yeah," I muttered. "You were." She wiped at her eyes. "I love you, Tony. I don't want to lose you." I let out a breath, shaking my head. "You don't want to lose me, but you had no problem disrespecting me behind my back." "I wasn't trying to disrespect you," she insisted. I gave her a look. "Then what would you call it?" She swallowed, but didn't have an answer. I leaned forward, my elbows resting on my knees. "I need to ask you something, and I want the truth. No more half-truths, no more sugarcoating." She nodded. "Okay. Did you ever talk about me with him?" She frowned. "What do you mean?" I clenched my jaw. "Did you complain about me? Say anything bad? Make me sound like a bad husband?" She shook her head quickly. "No. I never badmouthed you, Tony. I swear. If anything, I avoided talking about you because I felt guilty. I didn't know if I believed that. But I let it slide, for now." I sat back, exhaling. "I don't know if I can just snap back to how things were, Selena. I don't know how to look at you the same way." Her face crumpled. "But I'm trying." I held up a hand. "I see that. But you broke something. And it's going to take time to fix." She wiped at her tears, nodding. "I'll wait. However long it takes, I'll wait." I didn't say anything. I just turned back to the TV. I could feel her staring at me, waiting for some kind of reassurance. But I had nothing to give her. Because deep down, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to fix this. I kept telling myself I just needed time. That if Selena really meant what she said, if she was serious about fixing this, then maybe we could get through it. But the doubt wouldn't leave me alone. No matter how many times I replayed our conversations, something kept gnawing at me. I wanted to believe she was telling the whole truth now, but after finding out she had been lying for months, how was I supposed to just take her word for it? So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started digging. It started with her old texts. She had deleted her chat with Brian, sure, but I knew how phones worked. Messages don't just vanish into thin air. While she was in the shower, I took her phone. My hands were shaking as I opened her deleted messages folder, my stomach twisting with dread. And there it was. A bunch of messages permanently erased, probably right after I confronted her. But one text string still had a preview left, a piece of a message she hadn't fully wiped. "You drive me crazy, Selena. I don't care what we have to do, I want more. More." My blood ran cold. She told me nothing ever happened. That it was just stupid flirting. But Brian's words said otherwise. This wasn't just harmless fun for him. I put the phone back before she noticed. I needed more. So, I checked our phone bill. I had never done that before, never had a reason to. But now? Now I wanted to see exactly how much they had been talking. And man, my stomach dropped. Hundreds of texts. Late-night conversations. Calls during her lunch breaks at work. 2 months? Yeah, right. This went back at least 5. I stared at the screen, my hands gripping the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. She had lied. Again. That night, I couldn't even look at her. She was acting all careful, like she was afraid to say the wrong thing. Trying to be extra sweet, extra loving, like that would erase everything. I sat across from her at the dinner table, watching her put on this whole act, and all I could think about was how much of a fool I had been. And then, out of nowhere, she said something that made my skin crawl. "I was thinking," she said softly, "maybe we should do a weekend trip. Just us. To reconnect." She reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I didn't move. Because now, all I could see were her hands typing out those texts. Sending that picture. Entertaining Brian while I was home, trusting her. She noticed my hesitation and bit her lip. "Tony. I'm trying." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Let me ask you something." She tilted her head. "Okay." I stared right into her eyes. "If I never caught you, would you have ever stopped?" Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. That was my answer. I pushed my chair back and got up, leaving her sitting there in silence. She could say she was sorry all she wanted. She could promise she'd change. But deep down, I knew the truth now. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that text, Brian saying he wanted more. Selena had sworn up and down that it was just innocent flirting, but that message told me otherwise. And the way she froze when I asked if she would have stopped on her own? Yeah. That told me everything I needed to know. She wouldn't have. This wasn't just some stupid mistake. It was a choice. A series of choices. And now, I had to decide what I was going to do about it. The next morning, Selena was up before me, making breakfast like it was any other day. Like she hadn't shattered everything. She looked up when I walked into the kitchen, her face hesitant. "Hey." I ignored her and grabbed a cup of coffee. She sighed. "Tony, please don't shut me out." I took a sip, then set the cup down. "When were you going to tell me the truth?" She blinked. "What?" I turned to face her, arms crossed. "The real truth, Selena. Not the sugar-coated version you've been feeding me." Her whole body tensed. "I told you everything." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "No. You told me what you thought I'd accept. But I checked the phone bill." Her eyes widened. I nodded. "Yeah. Funny thing, it doesn't match your story." She swallowed hard. "Tony, 5 months," I cut her off. "Not 2. 5. She dropped her gaze, twisting her fingers together. "And that message from Brian? The one you forgot to delete?" I shook my head. "I want more." I repeated his words, watching as her face crumbled. What did he mean by that? She wiped at her eyes, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know." "Yes, you do," I shot back. She sniffled. "Tony, I swear to you, we never slept together. We never even kissed. He was the one who kept pushing for more, but I never let it happen." I stared at her, trying to figure out if I believed her. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But how could I? "You lied about how long it was going on," I said slowly. "You lied about how much you were talking." So why should I believe this? She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. Because I love you. Because I don't want to lose you. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, watching her cry, feeling nothing. No sympathy. No anger. Just emptiness. She looked up at me, her eyes desperate. Tony, please, tell me what I can do to fix this. I'll do anything. I exhaled, shaking my head. I don't think you can. Her breath hitched. Don't say that. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling exhausted. I don't know what to do, Selena. I don't know how to look at you and not see this. She took a step closer, reaching for me, but I stepped back. That hurt her more than anything else. And honestly? Good. Because now she knew what it felt like to be me. Selena was a mess. I could see it in the way her hands trembled when she reached for me. The way her eyes stayed glossy and swollen, like she had been crying non-stop. But here's the thing, I didn't care. Not anymore. She was desperate now because she had no control. Because the moment I found out, she lost her power in this. She had spent months feeding off Brian's attention, living in the fantasy of being wanted, while I was home thinking we were just in a rough patch. Now, reality hit her. And she hated it. Good. I didn't stay in the house that night. I needed air. Space. Time to think. I grabbed my keys, muttering, I need to get out for a while. Selena panicked. Tony, wait. Where are you going? I turned at the door, giving her a hard stare. You didn't care where I was when you were texting Brian every night. Don't start now. Her face crumpled, but I walked out before she could respond. I ended up at my buddy Mark's place. He was one of the few people I trusted enough to talk to. When I got there, he took one look at me and cracked open a beer without asking questions. We sat on his back porch in silence for a while, the night air heavy. Eventually, he leaned forward. All right. Spill it. I exhaled. Selena's been talking to some guy from work. Emotional cheating. Flirty messages. Sending him pictures. Mark's face darkened. She admitted it? I nodded. Only after I caught her. He let out a long whistle. Damn, man. I'm sorry. I took a swig of beer, staring into the distance. She swears nothing physical happened. That it was just stupid flirting. Mark scoffed. That's what they all say. Yeah. He shook his head. You believe her? I ran a hand through my hair. I want to. But she lied about how long it was going on. Lied about how much they talked. And this guy? He was pushing for more. I clenched my jaw. If I hadn't caught her, who knows what would have happened. Mark took a sip of his beer, thinking. Look, man, you got two choices here. You either try to work through this and live with the doubt, or you walk away and save yourself the pain. I exhaled. I just don't know if I can ever trust her again. Mark leaned back, shaking his head. Then there's your answer. I didn't say anything. Because deep down, I knew he was right. When I got home, it was late. Selena was waiting up for me, sitting on the couch in one of my old hoodies. She jumped up as soon as I walked in. Tony. I ignored her and headed for the bedroom. Please, she begged, following me. Please don't shut me out. I turned to her, my voice cold. Selena, I don't even know who you are anymore. Tears filled her eyes. I'm your wife. The same woman who loves you The same woman who let another man talk to her like she was single? I cut in. The same woman who sent him pictures while I was home, clueless? She let out a sob. I messed up, Tony. I know that. But I want to fix this. I laughed bitterly. Now you do. She nodded desperately. Yes. I'll do whatever it takes. I studied her for a long moment. Then, I said the one thing I knew would hit the hardest. Then why did it take getting caught for you to feel this way? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because she knew the truth. She didn't regret doing it. She regretted getting caught. And now, I had to decide if that was something I could ever forgive. I barely got any sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind went back to those messages, to Brian's words, to the way Selena had looked at me, not with guilt, but with panic that she had lost control of the situation. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I hadn't found out, she'd still be sneaking around, soaking up his attention while I sat at home, completely unaware. That thought made me sick. Selena kept trying. She sent texts even though I was just in the next room. I love you, Tony. Please don't give up on us. I ignored them. She knocked on the door. I ignored that too. Eventually, around 2 a.m., I heard her slide down to the floor outside the bedroom and just sit there. She sniffled a few times, probably hoping I'd break and open the door, but I didn't. I wasn't in the mood for more lies. The next morning, I found her asleep in the hallway, curled up in one of my hoodies. A part of me felt something seeing her like that, reminded me of the early years when she used to fall asleep on the couch waiting for me to get home from work. But that was a different time. That was before I knew what she was capable of. She stirred as I stepped over her. Tony, her voice was raw, like she had spent half the night crying. I didn't respond. I just went to the kitchen and poured myself some coffee. A moment later, she appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted but determined. Can we talk? I sipped my coffee, staring out the window. Talk about what? She shifted on her feet. Us. What happens now? I let out a slow breath and turned to her. I don't know, Selena. What does happen now? Because I sure as hell didn't plan for this. She flinched, but I didn't care. She took a few steps closer, wringing her hands. I know I hurt you. I know I messed up. But Tony, I love you. I don't want to lose our family. I scoffed. You should have thought about that before you let Brian become part of your life. Her face crumpled. It wasn't like that. I wasn't planning to. To what? I cut in. To fall for him? To let him talk to you like you were his? To lie to me every single day? Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't fall for him. It was never real, Tony. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening on my coffee mug. It was real enough for you to send him pictures. She covered her face with her hands, her voice breaking. I was stupid. I liked the attention, and I let it get out of hand. But I never stopped loving you. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You loved me while you were texting another man? While you were entertaining the idea of more. You loved me, but it took me catching you for you to realize you didn't want to lose me. She wiped her face, her breathing shaky. I swear on everything, Tony, I never touched him. I never even met him outside of work. It was just words. Stupid, meaningless words. I tilted my head, studying her. Meaningless? So if I had been doing the same thing with some woman from work, you be fine with that? If I had text saying I want more from some coworker, you be okay? She hesitated. I smirked. Yeah, that's what I thought. She broke down again, but I was done feeling sorry for her. Done watching her fall apart and expecting me to be the one to pick up the pieces. After a long silence, she finally spoke again. What can I do? Tell me. Whatever it takes. I exhaled sharply. You really want to fix this? She nodded quickly. Quit your job. Her eyes widened. What? You said you talked to your supervisor about transferring to a different unit, right? I leaned against the counter. That's not enough. If you really want to prove to me that this is over, leave the hospital. Find another job. Her mouth opened and closed. Tony, that's my career. I shrugged. Yeah, well, our marriage was supposed to be forever too. Her face twisted in frustration. I blocked him. I deleted everything. You also lied about how long this was going on, I interrupted. Forgive me if I don't just take your word for it. She looked down, silent. Or, I continued, if quitting is too much, we can just end this now. She gasped, looking up at me in shock. Your choice, I said simply. Her whole body was trembling. I'll do it, she whispered. I'll leave. I nodded, setting my coffee down. Good. Because if you're really serious about fixing this, Selena, then you need to show me, not just tell me. She stared at me like she was realizing for the first time that she wasn't going to just cry her way out of this. And honestly, it was about time. Selena didn't argue after that. She just stood there staring at me, her lips slightly parted like she wanted to say something, but she couldn't find the words. I could see it, the hesitation, the way her mind was racing, trying to process whether she was really willing to throw away years of her career just to prove something to me. And honestly, I was waiting for her to refuse. I was waiting for her to snap, to tell me I was being unfair, that I was punishing her too harshly. If she had, at least I'd know where she truly stood. But instead, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. I raised an eyebrow. Okay. She swallowed hard, wiping at her face. I'll do it. I'll quit. I searched her face for any sign of resentment, any sign that she was only agreeing because she was backed into a corner, but all I saw was raw desperation. She was really going to do it. And for some reason, that didn't make me feel any better. For the next few days, Selena tiptoed around me. She was overly careful, overly accommodating, like she thought if she did enough little things, made my favorite meals, rubbed my shoulders, let me have the TV remote without question, it would make me forget everything. But I didn't forget. I couldn't. She came home from work on Wednesday looking pale. She set her bag down and leaned against the counter, exhaling like she had just run a marathon. I glanced up from my laptop. What? She rubbed her arms. I told my supervisor I'm leaving. I shut the laptop. And she let out a bitter laugh. They were shocked. Kept asking me why, trying to convince me to stay. I shrugged. What did you tell them? She hesitated. That I just needed a change. I stared at her, waiting for her to say more, but she didn't. She couldn't even bring herself to admit to them, or to herself, that the real reason she was leaving had nothing to do with her job and everything to do with Brian. Typical. She stepped closer. Does this help? I leaned back in my chair. What do you mean? She chewed on her lip. Does it help you trust me again? I let out a slow breath. Selena, quitting your job doesn't undo what you did. Her face crumpled. I know that. Then why are you acting like this is some magical fix? I shook my head. You can leave the hospital, but you chose to entertain Brian for months. That's not something that just disappears overnight. She sat down across from me, wringing her hands. Then what can I do, Tony? Because I feel like no matter what I say, no matter what I do, you'll always look at me like this. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Selena, the problem isn't just that you cheated emotionally. The problem is that you lied to my face. 4 months. And I had to dig for the truth because you refused to just give it to me. She blinked rapidly, her breathing shaky. I was scared. Scared of what? Losing you. Her voice cracked. If I told you everything from the start, you would have left. I exhaled sharply. So instead of being honest, you just kept lying? She dropped her head. I thought I could fix it before you ever found out. I laughed, shaking my head. And how was that going to work, Selena? You think Brian was just going to stop? You think you could just fade him out and everything would go back to normal? She flinched at my tone. I sighed, rubbing my temples. You know what the worst part is? She looked up at me, her eyes already bracing for the hit. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I don't even know if I want to fix this anymore. She sucked in a sharp breath. Tony. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I'm going for a drive. Her voice wavered. Please don't go. I didn't answer. I just grabbed my keys and walked out the door, leaving her sitting there in silence. And for the first time since this all started, I wasn't sure if I was ever coming back. I drove for hours with no real destination, just circling the city, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do. Every time I thought about going home, I pictured Selena's face, the way she looked at me like I was slipping through her fingers, the way her voice cracked when she said she was scared of losing me. But was she scared of losing me, or was she scared of losing the life we built? Because there's a difference. People don't just throw away something they truly value, even for a second. And she didn't just throw it away, she tossed it, watched it fall, and only started scrambling to pick it up after she got caught. At some point, I pulled into an empty parking lot and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel. I thought about the past 12 years. Thought about how much I loved her, how much I fought for this marriage, how I built my entire life around my family. And now, all of that was cracked down the middle, and I was just standing there, trying to figure out if it was even worth repairing. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Selena. A couple of texts. Selena, please come home. Just let me know you're okay. Selena, I love you. I stared at those words. I used to feel something when I saw them. Now they felt empty. I didn't reply. When I finally got home, it was late. The house was dark except for the dim glow of the living room lamp. Selena was sitting on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, like she had been waiting all night. When she saw me, she jumped up, her face full of relief. "Tony," she whispered, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to say my name. I shut the door and walked past her, straight to the kitchen. I needed water. Space. She followed, hesitant. I was worried. I took a long sip before setting the glass down. "Yeah." She crossed her arms over her stomach. "Are you leaving me?" I turned to her slowly. "Should I?" Her face crumpled. "No." I studied her, searching for something, anything, that made me believe she actually understood what she had done. "Tell me something," I said quietly. "Why did it take this for you to realize you wanted me?" She shook her head quickly. "Tony, I've always wanted you." I let out a sharp breath, cutting her off. "Don't lie to me." "Not now." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "I never stopped loving you. Then why wasn't I enough?" She didn't answer. I nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." Silence stretched between us. She wiped at her face, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do I have to do to fix this?" I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. "You can't." Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but I saw it, the flash of realization in her eyes. The moment she understood that no matter how much she cried, no matter how many times she said she was sorry, no matter what promises she made, something between us was permanently broken. She covered her mouth, shaking her head. "Tony, please don't do this," she choked out. "Please don't give up on us." I closed my eyes for a long moment, trying to steady myself. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again," I admitted, my voice rough. She stepped closer, her fingers trembling as she reached for me. "But you could try." I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did she. Selena stayed on her side of the bed, curled up, sniffling quietly, probably hoping I'd reach for her like I used to. I didn't. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling like a stranger in my own home. I kept thinking about all the times she had told me she loved me over the years. All the times she had held my face in her hands and kissed me like I was the only man in the world. And now? Now I couldn't even look at her without wondering how long she had been feeding Brian the same sweet lies. At some point, she whispered, "Tony." I didn't answer. A shaky breath. "Are you awake?" I stayed silent. She let out another quiet sob, and I felt the bed shift as she buried her face in the pillow. Good. Let her cry. Let her feel what I feel. The next morning, I got up before the alarm even went off. I needed to get out of the house. I needed air. Selena sat up as soon as I moved. Her eyes were puffy, her face pale. "Where are you going?" I pulled on my shirt, not looking at her. "Work." She swallowed. "Can we talk first?" I slipped on my watch. "About what?" She hesitated, like she was afraid to answer. "About us." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Us." I shook my head. "There is no us, Selena. There's just me, trying to figure out if I even want to be in the same room as you." Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "Please don't say that." I grabbed my keys. "I'll be home late." She stood up quickly, panic flashing in her eyes. "Late." I stared at her, my expression unreadable. "Yeah. You had your fun sneaking around, right? Maybe I should try it." Her whole face crumpled. "Tony, please." I walked out before she could finish. At work, I couldn't focus. Everything felt off, like I was running on autopilot. People talked to me, meetings happened, but my mind was somewhere else. Around lunchtime, Mark texted me. "Mark, you all right, man?" I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Me, not really. A few minutes later, my phone rang. I sighed and answered. "Yeah. You need to get out of your head," Mark said bluntly. "Come out for drinks tonight. Just a couple. Clear your mind." I hesitated. "I don't know, man." He scoffed. "Tony, sitting at home staring at your wife like she's a ghost isn't gonna help. Get out for a few hours." I ran a hand down my face. Maybe he was right. Maybe I did need to step away from the mess for a bit. All right, I muttered. Where? That night, I didn't tell Selena where I was going. I didn't check my phone once. And for the first time in weeks, I almost felt normal again. But as I sat at the bar, watching people laugh and drink like their lives weren't falling apart, I realized something. I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally starting to let her go. I got home late. Selena was waiting on the couch, arms wrapped around herself, her eyes red and puffy. She must have been crying for hours. The second I walked in, she stood up, desperate. Where were you? Her voice was small, almost fragile. I tossed my keys onto the counter. Out. She swallowed hard. With who? I met her eyes, my expression unreadable. Does it matter? Her breath hitched. Of course it matters. I sighed, running a hand down my face. Yeah? Like it mattered when you were texting Brian? When you were sneaking around, giving him parts of you that were supposed to be mine? She broke down right then, covering her face with her hands. Tony, please, I don't know how to fix this. Just tell me what to do. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. You still don't get it, do you? She looked up at me, her lip trembling. This isn't something you fix, I said quietly. You broke us. And no matter how much you cry, no matter what you say, it doesn't change the fact that you chose him. Maybe not physically, but you chose him emotionally. And that. I exhaled. That's something I can't live with. She let out a sob. But I love you. I only love you. I scoffed. You loved me when you were texting him, too. Her shoulders shook as she whispered, it was a mistake. I met her eyes one last time. No, Selena. It was a choice. Silence stretched between us. For the first time I saw it, the moment she realized that no matter how much she begged, no matter what she promised, she had already lost me. She took a step forward. You're leaving. I reached for my keys, nodding slowly. I already did. And with that, I walked out the door, never looking back.